I am Couch Scoop, and we're starting with some controversy with our top remake list, PlayStation 5. We're playing the original remastered edition of The Last of Us 1 on the PlayStation 5. So let me clarify that again. This is not the new remastered that came out on PC. What a great launch, Druckmann. This is your bog standard PlayStation 4 remastered disc that's playing on my PlayStation 5. Obviously no SSD and no patch, but it runs at 60 frames everywhere, and I think it's available for about £4 to £5 pre-owned. So ridiculously cheap, not £70, which is what the new remaster cost on the PlayStation 5 currently.
Seems like more people are getting infected.
That just means more people are sneaking in.
If you own a PC and are a Fallout fan, Bethesda fan, you'll know that Fallout 4 had what's called an HD texture pack released for free that was then spread over the entire game and just made it look ridiculous. I put a lot of content out about it because I was so overjoyed that I got it on Game Pass for nothing, and then getting to download that texture pack and seeing that whole game in that beautiful resolution was worth so much to me, and it was all free. Which reminds me, we've got official PlayStation 5 versions of Fallout 4 coming. How much is that going to cost? I am also playing The Last of Us Part 2 extensively. I love the game in its latter stages, and we got a boost on the PlayStation 5 with an update that came through, which is very welcome and again did not cost anything. I'm not in any position to start putting a third purchase in for this series for an HD pack that costs what it does, so that's why I want to make a big fuss about this original PlayStation 4 remaster, because it does not look too bad at all. 1080, 60 frames per second, and there's a quality mode which I think is at 2K, which also runs at 60 frames per second on the 5. This is one of the greatest single player offline PlayStation 4 games available. I have waxed lyrical about it before, but it's kind of a perfect piece of pacing and a great zombie apocalypse game, but also the characters and the positioning of everybody within the story has not really been equaled in the years gone past, and I include part 2 in that conversation.
It's been a while. You don't visit us anymore.
It's got a front end that I must have played through about 10 to 15 times, and I still forgot how late the clickers are introduced and how much establishment is put into these different people that you meet and are slowly getting used to. Doesn't mean it doesn't have combat, it's just human based. And this game sort of set the bar, I think, for a lot of third person close quarters mechanics. When you start crawling or sneaking around and hiding behind stuff, you rarely play a third person ARPG that doesn't have one of these mechanics. Naughty Dog set the bar with it, even on the PlayStation 3, which reminds me, performed at 720. Wow, we don't have to look at footage of that. I was constantly on the lookout for like previous gen giveaways on a lot of the graphics and scenery. You don't see that much that says this game is as old as it is. Some of the smoke effects will look a bit garish and you won't see any decent reflections, but I was still really not back at unaged. It still looks. It came out in 2014. This remaster I'm talking about, that's coming up to 10 years old. I'm still impressed with it. Here's another point I wanted to discuss about remakes and remasters. I am scoring games on quality of life changes. We don't see a huge amount in the jump from the PS3 to the PlayStation 4, and we saw none in the actual newest remaster. It literally is the most expensive HD texture pack on earth.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
It's great to see Ellie as a character in her inception, the early days, the meeting with Joel, the bonding. It's an incredible story if you dovetail it into what goes on in part 2, but it's nice to just exist in this pre-world. It's a really cool game with such a cool message also. I'm not too sure what the message is with part 2, but its graphical prowess is what draws me in. And when we look at AI programming and actual textures and resolution frames per second, the newest remaster of The Last of Us Part 1 is just on the same level as part 2, but part 2's got loads of stuff you've not seen in it before. Shameless promotion alert, but Ellie features heavily in my top female protagonist. I feel her character development, her journey and character metamorphosis, both through age and attitude, is one of the more fascinating in gaming. So links and annotations, please hop on and have a butchers at that video. I'm also knee-deep in Dead Island 2, which is by far the most grotesque, gory, zombie-ridden game I have ever played. It's blinding. You will be rocked right off your chair. I'll put the link in the description for that also. This is like an acoustic version of that. Okay, let's get Demon's Souls underway. This was the first official remake that we saw on the PlayStation 5, and it's a very important game for me because it was one of the first PlayStation 5 exclusives. Now, they're as rare as rocking horse shit. There's only 3 of them on the market, Ratchet & Clank and Returnal, and the third is a goddamn remake, but it's a remake of one of the most famous Souls games on earth. Actually, talking about PlayStation 5 exclusives, at the date of this video, 2023, Horizon Forbidden West has just released a PS5 exclusive piece of DLC called Burning Shores. It will be coming on the channel, and I am very glad that the PlayStation 5 owner is starting to get the recognition they deserve for that 450 bloody quid. Okay, let's get back to Demon's Souls and that performance and the way the game looks. I remember looking at the background development videos and they would show what they'd done to just a simple cutscene. They literally lifted the whole goddamn game format off the ground and completely swept it away with new graphics, rebuilt everything. It's beautiful. It's a piece of art, this game, with or without the remake. Because Demon's Souls is quite early in the Souls game of things, it's got a strange nexus system that's not really existing to a lot of the pattern on later Souls games, i.e. Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3. We do have a sort of hunter's realm in Bloodborne, but this was different and it was quite punishing. They managed to tweak a few things around and make it a bit more acceptable as a modern game, but it was still leaning on some quite annoying mechanics, one of which being having to farm and find the little green herbs to get your health back. There's no quick way around any of that, and I was really amazed that the developers didn't iron out a lot of that annoying fetchery that can make this game a bit of a niggle, and its difficulty, I feel, is still really full on. This is reworked by a studio called Bluepoint, who have another game coming up, spoiler alert, but it was one of the first sort of current gen official remaster, rollout, all brand new mechanics and look. I think they had a very difficult task because this had a bedrock of fans that were diehard, and if you ruined loads of it by making it, I don't know, a battle royale, but you know what I mean, there's a whole bunch of From fan eggshells there, which are very easy to step on. I have fallen foul of that fan base a lot. It is Shadow of the Colossus running on the PlayStation 5 at top spec, 60 frames, 4K. It's pretty unbelievable. I have a story on this game. The PlayStation 2 version of this game was strong and one of the best on the entire system, and I would have my PlayStation 2 at a flat. I lived with 7 people I was in. It was 2005 anyway. My TV didn't have a SCART. It was back when some TVs did, newer televisions would, so I had to use the downstairs lounge, which is the communal lounge, so I had to pick the times to which I played my PlayStation 2, which was a frigging nightmare. Imagine that as a grown adult. It was always a bit of a battle. I had to play games in the middle of the night in the week and then go to work the next day, and I came back from the supermarket one weekend and it was about midday, 1 o'clock, and I let myself, the front room was right by the front door, I let myself through the front door and I heard this. The whole household, like 5 of them, they're all playing it. I come around the corner and I'm like, what? And they're like, this game's amazing. I'm like, yeah, I know. We played it all day. It always went on and we finished it. There's 16 bosses. It's a hell of a piece of programming because it was large. The bosses are huge and the map itself is vast and expansive. It makes you feel very small, very ant-like. As a current gen gamer, it still looks damn good. All the dissipation, some of these intros, gorgeous. The studio Ico, they made a game of the same name they did The Last Guardian. Bit of a sad one, really. This was their peak, unfortunately. They might come back with something. The Last Guardian's a game I looked at extensively because it had true 4K and 60 frames per second, even on the PlayStation 4 Pro. So I might earmark that one for a later visit on the PlayStation 5. But essentially the game doesn't offer the broad scope of emotion, action, horse-based combat, swordplay, arrows, sculling around the hooves of gigantic monsters like Shadow of the Colossus does. I will say this, some changes have been made in AI and companionship when it comes to equine establishment, and this horse is the most unruly in the whole game. It never does what you say.
Abro!
Such a stickler for photobombing and trying to get my nice captures. This thing does not care. But let's get back to the game. And one of the things that stood out even on the old generation versions of this is the hair. I know it's a crazy one, but the hair and fur mechanics are integral to the game model because you sort of cling on to these beasts, and if there's no fur, there's no clinging. But the way it spreads and waves in the wind and part when you're sort of swathing through it all, it feels extremely natural. The animations on these colossi hasn't changed since the original game because they were just spot on first up, and some of the puzzle and staggered problem solving that you have to do with each different colossus is really well thought out. Nothing's the same. You have to think out the box with a lot of it, and everyone's got its sort of arena slash environment that it's in. They might be underwater, they might be in sand, they might fly, and this hands down is one of my most memorable gaming moments of all time, I think. What's it actually like as a remaster? Have they given any quality of life changes or made the game vastly different with moving variables around? The answer is no. This is a carbon copy. Even the UI has just changed from yellow to pink. That's about it. The game did not need much moving around at all. It was kind of perfect at the beginning, so that was top marks. It didn't need mucking around with, and thank God Bluepoint stuck to the brief and really just made this a better looking version. Maybe the camera has had some adjustments to it, and that's something I will talk about. It's extremely cinematic, and it will often just take the camera out of your hands. Now, I'm obsessed with where the camera is in relation to the character at all times, and I'll often have my thumb controlling the character the entire time. I might want to get some cool footage of something coming around a corner. This will just grab it from you and I'll be wrestling with it. It was a lot of headache getting the footage I was looking for this video. Plus, there is an amazing Last Guardian barrel hidden up, which I didn't spot first time round. This remake cinematically is an absolute masterpiece, and caning around on your horse, the way the camera pans out, it's got a slight bit of judder on it. You really do feel speed, but more importantly you feel adventure. Back to that size comparison thing, the whole world is constructed to make you feel like this puny little dude who's got 16 massive monsters to take down.
The reason the marker won't begin?
We're at the 15-minute mark. 4% of my audience make it to this stage. So welcome person, whoever you are. We do only have 2 remake remasters left. This is one of them, and we're solidly in the realm of that quality of life improvement now. These 2 games have won this because they've pushed in just enough, some of them a little bit more than enough, extra content and extra ideas to bolster the experience. Now, the Dead Space remake is such a solid example of that, reworking every single aspect of the original game, and my god, the assets, the weapons, the monsters, the villains, incredible stuff. The original featured some unbelievable suspense, and the Ishimura, which is the ship that you're on, the huge mining craft, had its daunting halls and areas even when it was first thought up, but to rework it and to give it even more space, even more scary long corridors that stretch on into beautiful 4K infinity, it's incredible. And that not even going anywhere near the enemies and the old fire options on all of the weapons. That campaign is barely recognisable. Hand on heart, I recognise hardly any of it, only the intro really, but that's because it was such a long time ago. But I did also play the original on PC, it's available on Game Pass, and even then a lot of the footsteps and major areas, they've been moved around, but in a very good way, and some of the characters have got better dialogue, more sort of solid presence in the story structure.
I worked with him for years. Johnston too.
But it's this re-established look. Few games operate on the PlayStation 5 in quality mode as good as this. We've just had Dead Island, I did mention it before. You've got this, you've got GT7, i.e. Gran Turismo 7, and Horizon Forbidden West also puts out a pretty good quality mode. But blimey, I was knocked very far back when I fired this up first time. It's like listening to an album that's been re-recorded properly. Those gun effects, combined with all this light and combined with the terrifying rework of the monsters, is unbelievably good. The game is rolling in at full cost, however, but because of how extensive this redesign is, I don't really mind paying it, and I'm a huge horror sci-fi fan, as you all know. I'm also not going to bang on about its detail to high heaven. It has featured in my Dead Space or Callisto Protocol, all top sci-fi games full stop list. My god, see you down there. It's also got just enough little bit of extras, new suits that you haven't seen, and some cool areas of the map that have been put in for the new game. Dead Space is number 2 for damn good reason. Let's just start with the models, right? The little character models that you unlock with your money that you get in the game. That was really introduced properly with 5. You did see a bit of it in 4, but it was so extensive. In the 5th game, gone for 7 and 8, 6, I don't know what it was up to. Why is this the best remake ever made? Well, just this shot here explains a little bit of my point. Now, do we remember remastered Last of Us right at the beginning? I was talking about that game being well ahead of its time. Just look at the stance of Leon. Crouched, all the camera's different, he's in the left corner, the tension's up there, the camera's closer. It all is to do with cinematics and having this game compete with all the rest of the AAA third-person RPGs on the market. Holy Christ, it does that okay. Quickening everything, all of the enemies, your weapon swap even, the way you turn around, the look of the whole game is so refreshed, it feels like Resident Evil 9. You can quote me on that.
Would it make me use this? Would you?
Well,
after 6 years. That is one hell of a greeting.
A little bit like Dead Space, it lulls you into that. You remember this intro, it starts you on that village and you sort of had the chainsaw guy and the church temple, but then it just starts getting unrecognizable. You're introduced to some mechanics that are brand new. The UI is just so slick and easy, and I'm loving the little trinkets that you put on the case and the new weapons and monsters. Man, these are crazy things. There's enough familiarity in there for you to know exactly what to do in the game with the puzzles and the controls and upgrading guns and going to see the tradesmen, but so many new areas, environments and boss fights and reworked boss fights that you're just cracking smiles the whole way because you're like, oh my god, I remember this. You're seeing buzzy detail everywhere. It's running at 4K, the cinders, the projectiles, smoke, the panic, and we haven't even touched on Mercenaries. It's huge and it's so new and it's got so many cool ideas in it, and the variations on each character and weapons. You have locked loadouts, so you really have to think about who you want to take into battle depending on what sort of map you've got coming up. The personality in the close quarters moves on every different character and the incentive to unlock it all, massive. That's a game in itself. And that is nothing like the original Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries mode at all. Barely recognizable. I've been lucky enough to play this game on every system it came out on, including the Wii U with the nunchucks free roaming sight sort of system, which did and didn't work, but it's great to see it as a modern 2023 AAA gem. And talking of gems, if you're still here, thank you so much. I have been Couch Q. I will see you down there.